Hello and welcome to my April reading plans video. Today I am going to share with you the books that I am hoping to get to in April. I decided to go back to where I recorded my April TBR from last year. It looks the same outside, but I noticed in my video last year I was wearing a dress and just didn't look nearly as cold, but that's all right. I got my sweater on. I have a blanket in my basket just in case I get too cold. And I am out here in the sunshine, ready to share with you my spring book choices. I've got Wormwood Abbey by Christina Baehr that is at the top of my list. This is the first in the Secrets of Ormdale series. I follow Christina Baehr on Instagram and love her insights and photos and just life that she shares. And so I've had this actually on my physical TBR for way too long. So in this we have Edith. She gets brought to this like crumbling Gothic manor and discovers a legacy and family secrets. We also have a handsome neighbor. We have a cantankerous cousin named Gwendolyn that Edith is trying to befriend. And all through this, it just, I think, feels like this cozy Gothic novel, but with dragons. So part of her family legacy, I think, is being a dragon caretaker, which is so right up my alley. And so I'm excited to dive into this. And like I said, this is at the top of my list. I've had it for way too long. And so I'm hoping that this is the first book that I read in April. I thought about adding Death of an Author by E.C.R. Lorac to my choices for a group read for the Mayflowers Readathon next month, but I didn't choose that one, and so it's something that I want to read as soon as possible. E.C.R. Lorac often has these dark autumnal or even winter mysteries, and they're like set in these cold settings, but the cover of Death of an Author just looks very spring-like to me, and so it's one that I am wanting to get to sooner rather than later. So in this we have Vivienne Lestrange, who is a celebrated mystery author, but also known as a recluse. Vivienne Lestrange has apparently just fallen off the face of the earth. Nobody knows where he is. After Vivienne is reported missing by his secretary, Eleanor, we've got two inspectors, Bond and Warner from Scotland Yard, who are on the case. They kind of suspect that maybe Eleanor herself is the author, but then when Lestrange's housekeeper also goes missing, it just becomes a lot more serious to them, and they really dive into this case. So these inspectors are trying to figure out, is the housekeeper missing or has the housekeeper been murdered? They're not sure if Vivienne Lestrange is an actual person or if they are fictional and if Eleanor's the actual author. So they're really kind of trying to figure out what's going on and looking for potential murder and kidnappings. Knowing how Edith Carolyn Rivet writes mystery books, all the ones that I've written of all of her pen names and pseudonyms, they are all a big tangled mess. It's so much fun to try to figure out what is actually going on, what is a red herring, and so I would expect nothing less of this, and I am excited to have found a spring one. Another mystery / romantic suspense that I want to read this month is Heirs Above Ground, and that is by Mary Stewart. Love this cover so much. This is about the Lepeza stallions. Marguerite Henry has written about them. And actually, when I mentioned this book in a recent book haul, someone had mentioned that they were so intrigued by these stallions that Mary Stewart had highlighted in this story. They're very world-renowned. They loved them so much that they looked for a show and they actually went and saw these stallions perform. And I think even though the cover looks somewhat like fall and like dark and cozy, I think with the Spanish setting and Vienna, I think it's actually set in warmer months. So I thought this would be a good book to choose to try to kind of encourage a little bit more warmth and sunshine as our cold spring commences. For the Cozy Reader Book Club choice this month, we have Larkrise that we are reading, which is the first book in the Larkrise to Candleford trilogy by Flora Thompson. The Larkrise first book that we're reading was published in 1939 and I believe is a memoir-style exploration of childhood in a very small rural hamlet before modernism occurred. So it's Flora Thompson's experiences growing up. We've got May Day and childhood games and other stories in here that are just sweet and very reminiscent of olden times. I have really kind of avoided seeing any spoilers about this and actually have also not watched the adaptation. But to be honest, my plans are that I read Larkrise with Cozy Reader Book Club and then I read the next 2 books in the trilogy so that I can then watch the adaptation because I have heard really phenomenal things about it and I can just imagine that it is just beautifully well appointed. So I'm excited to finally read this with the Cozy Reader Book Club and to find out what everyone thinks about it and again also continue to get through this whole book is the goal. We'll see how long it takes me. I cannot remember where I heard about Sally Smith's A Case of Mice and Murder. This is The Trials of Gabriel Ward. This is the first in a new series, I think, and this is set in the early 1900s and I believe starts in May. So I thought this would be a good chance to kind of get a head start by reading it in April, especially since I have the Mayflowers Readathon going on in May. Yeah, so it starts with, it is anybody's guess what went through the mind of Lord Norman Dunning, Lord Chief Justice of England, on the evening of 20 May 1901, in those frantic seconds when he knew that his death was inevitable. So I think the thing that I like about this is that because it's set over 100 years ago, I just think the language and content will be reminiscent of that time period and so much more kind of in my comfort zone of what I would be looking for as far as like a modernly written murder, maybe thriller story. I also think that this cover is just so clever. We have the silhouette of the buildings and then you've got like this, it looks like a street lamps, but then also maybe a bottle of poison. I don't know. The shape is interesting. And then you've got the mouse. So I'm actually really excited about this. I'm hoping that it can meet my expectations. And then the last one is a chunker, and that is Rosamund Pilcher's Coming Home. I had the honor and pleasure to be invited by Jen to join her in her lives and just being a part of the Coming Home read-along that she is hosting from April to May. So I'm so glad that Jen sort of acknowledged how thick this book is and thought, you know what, this is probably better set for 2 months, as well as the publisher, with the publishing of this being in 2 parts. So it is perfectly divided. I'm so excited to read this. I've even added a book dart in there to kind of add like where the first part is and the second part is. So as I mentioned in our announcement video, in this we follow Judith Dunbar. I think the interesting part of this is that we are sort of introduced to her found family right from the beginning, where she is a little bit displaced and she ends up coming and staying with a family that she gets very much attached to. She sort of becomes like a surrogate family member. And this is the story of her coming back home to that, childhood place that she grew up in that was really kind of a found family and an adoptive environment. And so this is her life story. And I know with Rosamund Pilcher, we will have family saga, family drama, bittersweetness, ups and downs, and something that just really feels true to life because that is Rosamund Pilcher's way. So very excited to read this with so many of you, and also just really love this beautiful cover. By the way, I just wanted to mention that my version here with this raised foil lettering and flowers is a used version that I think you can find pretty easily online. Let me know what you are most excited to read in April, and let me know of what I've shared, maybe what you've already read and have thoughts on, or what you think maybe you would be interested in reading as well. As always, you guys, thanks so much for watching, and until next time.